Hi, and welcome to the AJN's new podcast, Conversations That Count. If you want to hear a crazy story which demonstrates the determination of IDF soldiers to return to their units in times of crisis, here's a classic. Today I have the pleasure of interviewing Dr. Tuvia Book. Tuvia found himself stuck in New York on the 13th of June when Israel launched Operation Rising Lion. He was determined to get back to Israel to rejoin his IDF unit, and when I say determined, I mean determined. It took him 10 days and an odyssey around the globe to finally make his way home. Not only does his story show the absolute love and passion Tuvia has for his homeland, it was a story repeated thousands of times around the globe as Israelis stranded overseas desperately tried to find a way home. What would you do if you found yourself overseas and Australia came under attack and hundreds of ballistic missiles were raining down on our cities? Would you try to get home? Or would you try to get your family out of harm's way? Unlike other countries on earth, Israelis feel the need to return home when Israel is at war. We saw how on the 7th of October, thousands of soldiers rushed to airports across the globe, desperate to return home and join their brothers and sisters in arms. In most other countries, civilians flee, but Israelis are made of stronger stuff, and the need to return home in times of war reveals their unique and intense love for their homeland and their sense of responsibility to contribute to the war effort. So let's hear what lengths one Israeli soldier went to simply return home. Welcome to our new podcast, Conversations That Count. Thanks for joining us today. Tuvia has been serving now in the IDF in a unit on the Gaza border since the 7th of October. Tuvia, do you know how many days you've actually served since the start of the war?
452.
My goodness. Well, that's a lot of days. So you've got quite an unbelievable story of how hard you tried to get back to Israel and rejoin your unit in this ongoing war, and how it all transpired is quite incredible. So let's start with, where were you on the 13th of June?
I was on an aeroplane on the way back, an El Al flight on the way back to Israel after having been in the States for what I thought was going to be 5 days. Initially, I'd flown for 5 days for a family occasion and also to bring back 10 bags of much needed supplies for my unit in the army, which your readers might be familiar with, which is a frontline combat medical extraction unit. So I had 10 massive duffel bags of equipment. I'd just come from 5 amazing days in the States, and we were flying over the Atlantic Ocean, and I got a WhatsApp from my deputy commanding officer saying, by the way, you're probably not going to be landing because we have just launched a strike onto Iran.
So you were on your plane returning to Tel Aviv. What exactly happened on that El Al flight? When was it that you first realized that you're not going to land?
So as soon as my officer told me, I had looked on our in-flight computer flight tracking and saw the plane had literally done a U-turn before it reached Portugal. It was very close to Portugal. It had done a U-turn and started flying back to New York. Meanwhile, the other passengers were totally oblivious because there'd been no announcement yet made. And they were serving a meal and everyone was watching their films and no one knew anything. But I seemed to know way before everyone, had both received the call and verified it on the in-flight tracking system. Then, about 20 minutes later, the captain made the announcement and all pandemonium broke out.
So what happened on the plane when everybody found out that the plane's being returned to JFK?
Well, he made the announcement saying Israel has just launched Israel's just launched a preemptive strike in Iran, and Israeli airspace is being closed. And people started yelling and screaming and oy vavoy, and he said, and we're going back to JFK. And everyone's, can you just land closer? Can you just go to Athens? Can you go to Cyprus? He said, no, those places are absolutely full. There was a young couple in front of me who were literally flying to their wedding in Israel 3 days later. And there was people with kids, and there was just like a lot of noise.
So you returned, the plane turned around, you came back to JFK, and what happened next?
Loaded all of our suitcases, and they gave us an El Al 1-800 number and said, further bulletins as events warrant, you will be contacted by email or by phone, and here's the El Al number, and we don't really have anything to tell you.
So You left the airport. I'm sure you were very, very emotional and upset, both hearing the news that Israel was again fighting another front in this relentless war, but also heading back to Long Island and not returning to Israel.
I was just a solo travel, but there's people with young kids and elderly, and there was a lot of confusion. People had to rebook hotels. People had nowhere to stay. People didn't know how long it was going to be. And Al just said, just keep all the receipts, but everything's on you. And there was a lot of uncertainty, a lot of confusion. The first thing I did personally is I called my army unit to explain the situation. We hadn't actually landed. We returned. And they said, just wait a day and they'll see what's going on. So 3 days later, I got a call from them saying that there's now going to be repatriation flights for soldiers, people who are active service soldiers, either on reserves or regular service, from Athens, and I should make my way to Athens.
Okay, so you're near JFK, and the army's contacted you via text message to say, make your way to Athens. There'll be a repatriation flight for soldiers from Athens to Israel. So what do you do?
So what happened next is I literally went on online, bought a ticket to Athens, and a few hours later, I was on the way to Athens, 10-hour flight via Spain. So I landed in Madrid, changed planes, get to Athens airport, called up the army and said, what do I do now? They said, well, just walk around the airport. There's got to be a corner somewhere with some Israelis there who look like military age. I said, okay.
Did you find the corner?
Walked around the airport, and lo and behold, there was a corner of Israeli backpackers looking around military age. And initially, when I got there, there was only about 20 of them there. I thought, okay, great. There's just like a small number of people, and they're sending in a plane for us. It was one of those Hercules transportation planes. They fit about 110 on. And I was waiting there for a couple of hours. No one knew what was going on. And my unit just said, wait there, something's going to happen. So I was waiting and waiting and waiting. I went around the corner just to charge my phone. And when I came back, suddenly, as if by magic, there was hundreds of people there. And there was security there, and there was armed, anything to do with Israel. There was armed Greek security there as well, and dogs and police and armored officers, and the Israeli Nisbach Tzvai, the army representative from the Israeli embassy in Athens was there as well, with his whole team of security people as well.
Why were there suddenly hundreds of people? Why did they go from dozens to hundreds?
Words had come around that the planes were on the way. I literally was gone for 2 minutes. I came back and it was a whole scene change. It was like I was in a different movie. It was like 20 kids just chilling around with their backpacks. Suddenly there was hundreds of people clamoring to get on planes. They'd set up barriers. There was a lot of security there. All this happened within minutes. And there was a lot of noise. And I spoke to one of the security people. They said, well, if you've got an active call-up paper, then it's fine. Then you'll be on. So I waited around a bit. And then the military representative from the embassy got up. The military attaché said only people who are on a WhatsApp list sent out by the personnel department, the IDF, plane 1 or plane 2 will be getting on. No one else will be getting on. There's no point even hanging around here. And he said it in the nicest way. And he was a nice guy. There was no yelling or screaming, even though there was a lot of emotions in the crowd. And I noticed people who were clearly not military age here as well, like much older people, including some ultra-Orthodox who clearly were not serving in the military, trying to get on these planes as well. And he just said, you've got to turn the emotion level down. Everyone's got to calm down. Unless you're on WhatsApp list plane 1, WhatsApp list plane 2, you're not getting on the plane. Full stop.
You left the airport. You gave up on that idea.
Unit and said, am I on this list? I said, yeah, you're on the list. So I went to the front of the line and they said, well, you're not on the official plane 1 or plane 2 list. Even if you are on the army personnel list, you're not on those lists. At the airport, I met 2 other people. One was a friend of mine, Lieutenant Colonel Peter Lerner, from the spokesperson's unit. He told me he'd been waiting for 6 days in Athens at this stage. And he literally just got a WhatsApp message 2 hours before saying, go to the airport, there's a plane leaving in 2 hours. And he jumped in a cab and came. I met another friend of mine who I'm not allowed to name, who was a former Air Force pilot with the rank of colonel, who tried to get onto the plane, and they just said, sorry, you're not on list 1, on list 2, you can't get on. So I'm thinking to myself, a lieutenant colonel, former pilot with a prestigious military record, can I get on this plane? I just have to sit tight and wait.
So now you are, 4 days into this ordeal. You're obviously desperate to get home. What is it that you think was drawing you to to be so anxious about getting home? Why? What were your feelings at the time emotionally?
That's a good question. As you mentioned earlier, Israel's the only people who send in rescue flights to fly into a war zone. Normally, when one is in a war zone, you're clamping to get away, as many Australians were and many British people who were tourists who were trapped in Israel. They were desperate to get out of a war zone. And the answer basically is a sense of service. In my unit, whenever we rescue wounded soldiers, their first question always is not about themselves. How am I? How bad is the wound? But rather, when can I go back and fight with my brothers? And that was it. I have a unit on the front lines. I thought I was leaving for 5 days. I had a huge amount of equipment to bring back to them. And what we do is we rescue wounded heroes. We go in and we take out soldiers from combat zones. Everyone has a position, whether it's a combat medic, a doctor, a paramedic, or the fighting soldiers. And I'm part of a team that's been in for a long, long time. And I just felt the sense of collective duty of service. And whilst I could have waited in New York for the duration, I personally felt a sense of mission that I had to get back to my brothers and sisters. I had to get back to the unit, and I had to get back to serve.
So you check into an Airbnb, from what I understand, that wasn't too shabby, and you could have just relaxed and enjoyed your time in Athens, but...
So I didn't actually go to Athens. All the Israelis were going to Athens, and the hotels are very overpriced. Literally thousands, if not tens of thousands of Israelis camped out all over Athens. And the scene was pretty chaotic. There's a lot of uncertainty and very high emotions. And I said, well, I'm not going to go into that. Plus, between you and me, I've only been to a few times to Greece. I've done the Acropolis, the Parthenon, the museums. And I wasn't in that mindset anyway. I was more eagerly waiting to get on one of these rescue planes to go back to my unit. So I literally opened up Google Maps, looked around the airport area until the 20 minutes away from the airport was a coastal village, Metepia, which I'd never heard of in my life. And I said, oh, well, okay, it's by the coast. It's 20 minutes from the airport. If I get summoned, I'm very close to there. And then I just went on the Airbnb app and found a very reasonably priced Airbnb. And if it wouldn't have been for the situation I was in, I could have really just enjoyed it. It was right by the ocean, came with its own bike and courtyard with fruit trees, and it was absolutely gorgeous for a fraction of the price a hotel would have cost in Athens. Thought, okay, I'll wait it out. And since I got there, I started WhatsApping and phoning and emailing all the various soldiers in my unit, and very right up the command structure as well, because Israel's all about not so much what you know, it's rather who you know. So
you start trying to get another flight back again. And how many days are passing by now that you've been?
So on day one, like after day one has gone past, I'm like, I know I'm on the list, but I have to be on either plane one or plane two. Meanwhile, if you can imagine the scene, there are thousands of soldiers, because every single unit has told their soldiers that you need to go back to Athens, and that's where we're going to repatriate from. But they're only sending in 2 flights a day with a capacity of about 220 max. And there are literally thousands, if not tens of thousands. Everyone who's serving, either regular army or reserves, who was just caught out the way that I was, is desperately trying to get back on one of these 2 planes. So I'm just turning up all my connections. 1 day goes past, 2 days goes past.
But I understand you started getting desperate, and you started to consider maybe potentially going to Jordan, to Egypt, or to Cyprus.
Correct. So 3 days had gone past by then with all my phone calls and WhatsApps, and I was checking out other options. I was registered on the El Al site, and I changed my location to Athens. They knew I was in Athens. So when they started doing planes, I hoped they could fly from Athens once those planes restarted. I checked out the Jordan option, because I do have foreign passports as well, as you might notice by my total lack of an accent. And I was told under no uncertain terms by very high-ranking officers there's a very, very high threat level in Jordan. Even though after a few days after the war broke out, there was a lot of people using this passageway, but they were mainly tourists in Israel, leaving Israel through one of the Jordan land crossings. And those land crossings were open the whole time. And I was thinking, wow, maybe I could come with a foreign passport into Jordan, get to a land crossing on the Jordanian side, and cross into Israel. And
in the meantime, there were dozens, I don't know, hundreds maybe of tourists fleeing across that border across from Israel into Jordan to catch flights out of Amman back to various destinations. And it was working for them, but you were informed by the army that was not a good plan, and you decided not to do that. It was regarded as too much of a security threat. So you then you were waiting now, this is 6 nights or 7 nights into this attempt to get home?
Correct. So I was waiting all this time. and checking out all these options. And basically, for security reasons, the army told me that it's not a good idea to do this. Oh, where did you go? I missed you. Hold on. Oh, there you are. It's not a good idea to do this. And what I really need to do is I need to sit tight in Athens so the army organizes something. I also checked about going to Cyprus. In Cyprus, there was a lot of boats going. Well, not a lot. There were boats, but they charging exorbitant fees. And there were tens of thousands of panicked Israelis in Cyprus as well, with a terror warning as well, which later, unfortunately, they actually caught an operative as well. And the Egyptian border crossing, even though it was open, had the same level 4, which is the highest terror warning. So I figured even if I go with a foreign passport, it's very easy to see on my social media that I'm serving in the IDF. And even though Egypt and Jordan ostensibly do have peace with Israel, it's a very cold peace. And the populations there are not big fans of Israel, and especially of the IDF. And I thought, why take that risk of having a knife between my ribs? In desperation to get home, I also need to take a step back and also turn on my rational switch as well and tone down the emotions a bit. And so I was sitting there, and on day 3, that's when the next change happened.
So day 3 comes along and you open your emails and?
Well, first of all, on day 1, I saw that I got a repatriation flight, but it was from Newark Airport, and I just landed in Athens. There's no way I could get back to Newark within a few hours to land on that flight.
So you missed that.
I missed that one. So I figured I'll wait in the army for the army to get its act together. Day 3, I got another El Al notification saying we have a repatriation flight, not from Athens where you're registered, but all the way back in Newark again in 2 days' time. So I had a choice.
Let me just recap. You were at JFK. You've flown from JFK towards Israel for 2.5 hours. The plane gets turned around. You come back to JFK. You stay there for 3 days waiting for a repatriation flight. You're told by the army to go to Athens. You go there for 3 nights waiting for them to repatriate you. And that doesn't happen. But you do get notification that there's a flight for you, a seat that is actually booked for you back in Newark, New Jersey.
Correct, which is the other side of the Atlantic Ocean, just for our geographically challenged listeners. So I decided, okay, I'd rather have a bird in the hand than 2 in the bush. And I've already been waiting around here for days for the army to get its act together. So I decided I'm going to fly back to Newark. So I flew all the way across the Atlantic again for the 2.5 time.
How many hours?
Newark Airport in New Jersey, 10 hours, 10.5. Get all the way to Newark Airport, actually get onto the plane. Sitting on the plane, and suddenly the next announcement is everyone off the plane. Now, everything had gone through. I'd boarded, luggage on, everything. I'm schlepping all these supplies around. Trump has just bombed Iran, and boom, everyone off. And this is now the 4th flight that I've been on that has been cancelled or turned around or
Unbelievable.
Make it through. And by this time, I was in total shock. No one could believe it. It's like lightning's not supposed to strike 4 times. In this expression in Hebrew, Kamshishik. You get the 3rd time you get your ice cream. This is the 4th time. I'm still not there.
No ice cream for you.
So I all the local hotels were booked by the airport hotels by Israelis who are just stranded, don't know what to do, their wits end. No one knows how long this one's going to last for.
Describe the scene at the airport with a full plane of Israelis having to disembark. What was the scene like?
The scene was mad. People were literally yelling and screaming. The captain of the plane came out to make the announcement. He said, I haven't been home either for 10 days, neither has the crew. We're just as trapped as you are, and there's nothing we can do about it. The airlines are closed. You can shout and scream as much as you want, but this plane's not taking off. We're staying here in Newark until we get clearance. And people were openly crying and shouting. There's a huge level of emotion. And my thought was, I need to get away from all of this. Everyone got their suitcases. I went back to a friend of mine in New York. Just a 2-hour Uber ride just to get there. And I was drained by this time. It was like 3-4 in the morning. And I said, okay, this could be another long haul again. I've been at this stage trying to get back to the country for 8 days, just non-stop, literally flying around the globe. I went to sleep. I thought it was going to be for a while. I woke up early and just checked the WhatsApps and the emails just to make sure there's no developments. And I saw in my email, there was a email from El Al saying there's a flight leaving from Newark in 4 hours.
Oh
my. Now I was 2 hours away and I only had like 3 hours sleep. And I just happened to glance at my email. If I wouldn't have looked at my email, I would have missed this one as well. And I literally, my suitcase is never unpacked. It's always been packed the whole time. Got an Uber for 2 hours back to the airport, got on the plane. it actually took off. And the captain said, as it took off, by the way, we do have extra fuel. So just in case there's a missile attack, we're not clear for landing, we'll be landing in an airport close to Israel, probably meaning Cyprus or Athens.
Yes.
So because of that announcement, because of my fifth attempt to get back, I couldn't sleep the whole flight. I was just literally on a very high level of awareness, watching the plane as we get closer and closer and closer, not believing I've been in this movie before. And finally, the plane touches down in Israel. Everyone's like clapping. And the woman who was making the announcement, the stewardess, said, finally, we're home again. And everyone was like cheering and clapping, and people started singing. And there was just scenes of mass emotion on the plane itself. But it wasn't yet over, because we taxied to the terminal. We were the only plane that landed. The airport was eerily empty, almost like a film set. Not one shop was open. There was a few police and armed people in the airport just guiding us towards our suitcases. We had to get out quickly. We still under ballistic missile threat from Iran. Grabbed the luggage as everyone else did, ran out the airport, jumped on a train to go to my hometown of Modi'in. The train pulls out 2 meters from the platform, and there's a massive incoming Iranian missile attack alarm. And the train just stopped in the tracks. We had to pile up with our cases and everything, cram into a bomb shelter for almost an hour. Hot, sweaty shelter.
There were actually 2 barrages, weren't there? There was a first, and then close by there was a second. So everyone had to just wait it out.
Welcome to Israel. Have a nice day. And there was a shelter there for maybe about 30, 40 people. We had about 100 people squashed like sardines and sweating with our suitcase
sweaty and hot and stinky and a mess.
This is the welcome back into Israel.
Wow.
And then when it all clear went, I made it back to Modi'in to hear 2 more siren alarms during the night before I went back to my unit the next morning.
So all in all, how many days did it take you to get back to Israel from? I mean, it's literally a case of, around the world in, 10 days?
Well, it was around the world in 9 days, but it was around the world, more than around the world. I worked out the kilometerage afterwards, and it turns out it was 16,500 kilometers, which is equivalent to flying 1.5 times around the equator. Or for those intrepid moon explorers amongst you, it's equivalent to flying 1/10 of the way to the moon. So I'd literally flown 16,500 kilometers, been across the Atlantic 2.5 times, spent some time in a Greek fishing village, all just to get back home, all just so I could put on my uniform again and fight with my unit.
Well, welcome home, and I'm sure it's a very, very exhausting trip that you made, and I'm sure that it'll take a few days to just get over that crazy adventure that was you trying to get back to Israel. We wish you well, and thank you so much for your service and for everything you've done during the war. It really has been a massive, massive effort. Thanks for talking to us today. Good luck.
Thanks for having
Stay
me.
safe.
Thank you.